Well, Jenny Moore and Brian Bolyer, it is such a pleasure to have you with me on Hemp Errands today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It is a pleasure.
Thank you, Miss Joy.
It was so wonderful to meet you in person at NOCO Hemp Expo this past March in Denver, Colorado, my very favorite trade show and hemp expo in all of North America. And you flew and traveled to be at NOCO all the way from Louisiana, where you operate Okhish-Mound-Farm. Will you please start to tell us a little bit about what Oakish-Mound-Farm does, and then we're going to move forward in what brought you to hemp?
Yeah, Oakish Mound. We have our seed producer license, and we are looking to bring certified good quality seeds for not just the fiber industry, but in the CBD as well. And we are the seed coordinators for the National Hemp Growers Cooperative doing their seed trials. And we've moved some seeds across Louisiana from Lafayette to Monroe and from north of New Orleans up to Jackson, Mississippi on both sides of the Delta. So that was a really great accomplishment this year, and pulling that off with the co-op and Nick and all them.
It's such an accomplishment, and we're so thrilled that you're working with the National Hemp Growers Cooperation. You know that I have so much faith and confidence in the National Hemp Growers Cooperative, and I think that was probably a huge part of what brought us together, because we're really talking about putting, I call it connecting the light encoded filaments, or other people might say connecting the dots, really chopping the wood and carrying the water of creating this supply chain and the infrastructure. And of course, it all starts with the seed. Now, when did you start cultivating for hemp at Oakish Mound?
Last year was our first year to get licensed. It was the first year legalized in Louisiana. So we went through the process, got it, and actually did a seed acquisition and got seeds here. And we just kind of did our own little experiments, got to know how to grow this stuff. And then this year, we renewed our license and really started moving seeds for the co-op was the biggest thing. We worked with LSU Research and Development. Mr. Gerald Myers supplied him seeds, and we're working with ULM as well, University of Louisiana Monroe, getting them seeds too. So we're doing a lot to find, what will work here in the Delta to be able to provide that for the farmers.
So important, as we often say, what is going to grow in your climate, your photo period, your soil, all of those things. And it is such a working in tandem with one another, from industry and farmers, and obviously with the academia, with the Department of Ags,
Yes,
with entrepreneurs, with students, all of those things. And it's just fantastic to see that the synergy developing in that region of the country. As we know, of course, the National Hemp Growers Cooperative, although they are absolutely national, and boy, Nick travels all around this gorgeous country connecting those dots. It's, of course, based in Mississippi.
yes, ma'am.
And their very first large in-person event was the ArcLemis, right? Hemp conference. And did you attend the ArcLemis?
We did.
You did. Excellent.
We were hoping to see you there, and you didn't get to make it.
I got to do it virtually. It's true. It's true. And I was so thrilled that he did it, because that there was still some COVID happening at the time there. But it was wonderful, and that he did the socially distance in person, Nick Walters of National Hemp Growers Cooperative. And are you thinking about putting any seeds in the ground this year, or are you just going to be doing, and I don't mean to say just, it's incredibly important work moving seeds and transporting those seeds around, but are you going to be doing any cultivation this year?
Yes, ma'am. We're going to start talking with Stacy Kaysen. She has some land down here as well, here at home. Probably contract lease some land from her, and Oakish Mound does its own experiments and everything. She introduced us to Dr. David Cornett, and he is the agronomist for the co-op and with us as well. So we're really going to gather a lot of information this year, and we will be doing some of our own experiments and testing of our own. Yes, ma'am.
Your variety trials and whatnot.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
you're talking about Stacy Kaysen, of course, from Planetary.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Yes, she is absolutely wonderful. And let me ask you this: what brought you to hemp? Where did you come from to decide that you wanted to explore this versatile, valuable plant and be a part of delivering on its promise?
I've always loved it. In '09, my son Jacob Brian Bolyer, he passed away from a seizure,
Oh, so
and
sorry.
when he was 4,
Mm,
and then a few years later, you start seeing all these things where kids were being cured, somewhat, it's the
True.
say treated, for seizures, with CBD and just the overall cannabis plant. And that breathed a breath of life in me, and if I could do my part to make sure that every family has that readily available to them, then I was going to do it. So, as I've got into this business and moved forward, it's grown and it's shaped and it's, molded into something that is so much greater than than we are. And I'm just happy to be a part of it and moving this objective along.
you really, for certain, as a parent, and that has got to be the hardest thing that any human experiences is the loss of a child. So you certainly have a great deal of motivation to explore, particularly the cannabinoid varieties of the plant. And also, of course, as you say, you folks are involved in fiber varieties as well. How about any grain varieties?
We're testing them out, LSU and ULM, and then we spreaded some out to some independent farmers as well. So we're going to test it and see how well it does here in this environment. It's been so wet, so wet. We have had so much rain that we're just now starting to be able to get things into the ground.
Yes, no, it is it's fascinating to watch it all unfold, right? And indeed, it's also the variety trials are so critical to the successful development, of the hemp industries because we only want to be growing varieties, obviously, that are going to be viable and be fruitful and provide economic stability for the farmer and, of course, for the industries that the crop serves in whatever region. And as we know, very wet climates. I'm sitting here speaking to you from the Pacific Northwest, and we have lots of dry land here. We have quite a few different sort of biomes within the state of Washington, as it were, and one of them is desert. But we certainly have rainforest here as well, and dampness, can be a definite foe of this particular crop, any densely planted crop indeed. What were any of your observations in terms of Louisiana last year from your trials? Anything that you are able to share with our southern listeners?
Yeah, there was some that grew. They had some good luck with the variety, but it was some of that China, stuff that got imported from China. It did fairly well. Some other stuff like the X59 and whatnot, it got about 6 inches tall, flowered, and fizzled out.
An X59 is a grain variety.
Yes, ma'am. As far as the CBD industry, a lot of the new farmers got in a lot of trouble with bad seeds, bringing in bad genetics, and there was just I was talking to Miss Dr. Angela Guidry at the LDAF, and this year they have tightened up on the seed acquisition, bringing stuff into the state so much after last year. She was
And so our listeners know LDAF, Louisiana Department of Alcohol and Tobacco and Firearms. Am I right? It's like
uh,
A.
Agriculture and forestry.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Okay. Because the Louisiana Department of Alcohol and
Yes, ma'am.
Tobacco and Firearms, they are at least alcohol and tobacco. They are involved in the Louisiana hemp
Yes, ma'am.
program as well. Is Got it. Okay, but the LDAF, thank you, Louisiana Department of Agriculture and Forestry versus the Louisiana Department of Alcohol and Tobacco, both of them involved. Okay. And when we say the bad seeds, and please forgive me for even interrupting you, just kind of informing our listeners here, it certainly is not that so much the farmers went out and sought bad seeds. You're never going to meet a farmer that's intentionally going to buy a seed that will result in a governing agency or a regulating body to destroy their crop. Often, what we are seeing here, of course, is that with the extract varieties, we have lots of unscrupulous
Yes,
seed
ma'am.
sellers. We have some wonderful, incredibly integral seed sellers out there. And the vast majority of seed sellers out
Yes,
there are
ma'am.
not. They don't have
Yeah.
any scruples. And so they are selling magic beans to farmers, saying, of course, there is 17% CBD, 0% THC. They're all feminized. The germination rate is 97%. It's everything that a hemp farmer who wants to maximize the cannabinoid content of their crop wants to hear. And yet they plant the seed, and as it turned out, there are I've seen everything from 2 to 17 different types of
Yes, ma'am.
phenotypes, a very poor germination rate, a ton of male plants, not
Yes, ma'am.
feminized seeds. Um, and yes, it's incredibly problematic. And unfortunately, it sounds like some of those seed sellers selling magic beans made their way to
Yes, ma'am.
Louisiana, and some Louisiana
Yeah,
farmers bought
yeah.
them.
One of them, a farmer, she said a farmer had, filled out the seed acquisition. They approved it. He got it, planted it, and come to find out it was a field full of morning glories.
Oh, it wasn't even of the genus
Yeah.
Right.
cannabis.
So they've moved into
Wow.
the COAs and the lot numbers and the batch numbers and everything that's been tested has to all match as far as where the seeds are coming from. And
That's called
Yeah.
right, it's been a
traceability.
real
Yep.
strenuous job, more so for Brian, trying to get all the paperwork and everything lined up. We even had to bring seeds in and have LSU test them because there was no viable paperwork on them, and they had to be tested, and we had to produce our own paperwork in order to bring the seeds into the state to have them approved.
It's such a fascinating conversation and situation, really, because in agriculture, generally speaking, there are certified pedigreed seeds, generally speaking, because for the most part, when we're talking about planting for commercial purposes, the manufacturer wants a very specific type of a plant. There are hundreds of different types of strawberries and tomatoes and roses, just to, as an example for our listeners. I'm certainly not telling you to anything you don't know, just kind of helping to form thoughts here for our listeners and paint the picture. And a manufacturer or a producer of goods, they're going to want to hire a farmer to grow a specific seed, generally speaking, so that the unique and distinct and stable characteristics of that plant pop up. And so generally, you all of that traceability, you're buying certified seeds. They're certified by a certifying body. This breeding program has been in business for quite some time, or the main breeder is using an agent or an authority in various jurisdictions to sell those seeds. It's all very papered up and all incredibly traceable. The thing is that we had prohibition for 80 something years here, and the germplasm for the beautiful varieties of hemp in the United States were not preserved by the US government. And so here we are being told, reemerge this crop. This crop is now able to take its rightful place in the broad light of day amongst all of America's other legal agricultural commodities. Grow the stuff. So we say, okay, but we need to figure out what grows. This is a very wily crop. And and extract varieties. So when we really separate sort of the three main varieties of hemp and the various industries that they serve. So we've got our extract varieties that will serve the cannabinoid market. We've got our fiber varieties. We're talking paper, textiles, building materials, biocomposites, supercapacitors, energy storage, battery and fuel, biomedical applications. And we've got the grain varieties. Now, that's seed, of course, human and animal body care, nutrition, certain amount of dietary supplements, of course, very, very rich in omegas and other things, and many, many industrial purposes, sealants, coatings, so forth. And certainly we could make biodiesel out of it. So the three: extract, grain, and fiber. Now, even though the United States, has been suffering from the arrested development of the crop because of prohibition, there are other countries in Europe and even in Canada directly to our north, as you well know, that started regulating the crop federally since 1998. So for grain and fiber varieties, there actually are certified pedigreed seeds out there. They're unique, distinct, and stable. The issue is, take a unique, distinct, and stable variety that grows really well in Manitoba, and then X59, for example, brother and sister, and then send it on down to Louisiana, and it turns out it doesn't grow that well in that climate, in that photo period, in that soil. So we need to come up with ones that do. Now, and then in terms of the extract varieties, of course, we have a situation where that's just brand spanking new. People have not been growing hemp traditionally. I mean, the very thought of it started to emerge in 2011. And then we started to see the hemp extract or hemp derived cannabinoids. Of course, it started with CBD, hemp derived CBD, cannabidiol industry start to emerge. We started to import things here around 2014 under gray circumstances, so to speak. But so those extract varieties, we don't really have unique, distinct, and stable. There are a couple just coming online thanks to some really hard work by folks, but they don't even really exist in the world. And so it's just fascinating that we have state departments of ag and various governments, state governments and the federal government, and thank goodness for this, that are sort of tolerating this asteroids hitting meteors explosion
Yes, ma'am.
of seed situation as we all really work together to deliver on this promise, even though that is a major problem that we have and a major challenge. And of course, how it ended up was hot plants, non-compliant plants, basically if it's above 0.3% delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol or delta 9 THC, it all of a sudden magically is a marijuana plant. And that's what ended up happening in Louisiana. The poor farmers, it sounds like, unintentionally grew a bunch of marijuana.
Yes.
Well,
if they can get it to grow, it turns into marijuana.
Man, that's a toughie when you're very highly regulated and you're only supposed to be growing hemp.
Right.
Yeah.
So our plan is to create something that is sustainable and grows and yields and is good for our climate.
And is good for our climate, works in your climate. Absolutely. My God. And any stories there, heartbreaking, interesting, funny, or otherwise, that you might want to share with regard to anything that happened around those seeds and the consequences of it last year?
We just really kind of stuck to ourselves. We didn't get into the big gold rush. We got tons and tons of calls and emails for CBG. And I wasn't going to get into all that, and come to find out it turned out to be a huge mess. Farmers lost $20,000 and this farmer lost this. And a lot of people didn't get back into it this year because of it. And so we're getting all of our seeds tested by the LDAF just to confirm germination rate and noxious weeds and make sure it's not a bag full of morning glories, just so people from Louisiana can know that they can get reliable seeds, that are what they say they are. Just to have one source of reliable seeds is huge, to be able to pull from.
It's tremendous, reliable, and compliant. I mean,
Yes, ma'am.
it's a two-parter when we're talking, right? With this, it's like, is it a reliable seed? Is it a compliant seed? We're
Yes,
really
ma'am.
we're in a heavily regulated market, and it's such important work that you folks are doing.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this as well, folks. I call 2021 sort of the year of the stand down. And everyone's like, well, we need to be growing more hemp. What we want is for farmers to have success. And farmers last year, by and large, did not have success because there had been, even the year prior, of course, a massive overproduction in hemp extract varieties. And as we've learned, it takes not so much biomass to make a whole lot of distillate. So I can make a lot of extract out of a little bit of plant. So we don't want farmers losing their shirt and growing crops that they cannot sell.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
so and we really want them to start, of course, growing oil seed and fiber crops, but only when there is infrastructure to support those
Correct.
crops. Otherwise, of course, we'd end up in another darn situation where the farmers have grown a crop or cultivated a crop without an end contract, and now they can't sell it. The good news is that infrastructure for processing that long, strong stock and for processing that nutrient dense seed is popping up all over the United States. But still, we don't want farmers to grow those types of crops when they don't have a contract. But what they can do, it's the year of the variety trial. So I'm glad to hear that many of the farmers who have in Louisiana are standing down this year in terms of growing for extract. And what we'd really love to see them do, and obviously you folks are the catalyst for doing it, you along with your strategic relationship with the National Hemp Growers Cooperative, and that is the variety trials for the oil seed and fiber. Because when that infrastructure does come, we of course want the farmers to be ready so that they know what will grow. I mean, boom, when they get the news that there's a plant that's breaking ground, and granted, it's not like it takes a week to erect a processing plant, particularly on the complexity, how large of a processing plant, and how many different additions down the line. Are they going to decorticate end bag? Are they going to decorticate bag and powder? All those different things.
Yes, ma'am.
But we want the farmers to be able to know. So when that infrastructure comes to a region near them where it's economically viable to move this heavy crop from the farm to the processor, and then from that processor to the manufacturer to continue to manufacture the goods of after that raw material has been processed, we want folks to be able to know what grows. So it's just so incredibly important. Now, there's also been a little bit of movement. Louisiana, Clay Schexnayder is such a hero in your state legislature. Really has been such a proponent, for hemp all of this time. And like all politicians and all lawmakers, there is the constant need to compromise, because as much of a proponent as Clay is, he of course has to wrangle the legislators and come up with something that everyone can agree on, because there are members of the legislature that aren't such big proponents. Anything you want to share with us about what's going on this year in Louisiana, or some major things that you feel need to change?
So one thing we've done this year is LSUS here has started a course called Careers in Cannabis, and we were fortunate enough to get in on the first class, and they're in the process of having their second class now. And we were actually given a date to give a lecture, and went pretty well. We flew our agronomist, Dr. David Cornett, down. ULOS Ogart from ULM partnered with us, and we were able to give a 2-hour lecture, and it was pretty awesome, educating people in cannabis. One thing that we are stressing to people is not to just go and plant an acre or so full of fiber, or to fill up a greenhouse with CBD oils without your outlet, of course. And I think that's where a lot of people lost, especially here in Louisiana. I think that they're in the process of getting one processing facility set up in South Louisiana. Other than that, there is no processing here as far as fiber. I think that there's people that are doing their own personal extractions.
Yeah.
But the class went really well. People are signing up for it. There's been like a waiting list for it. It's been pretty awesome. And we were really happy and pleased to get in on that. And we've made a lot of connections. We're able to work with more people. And we're trying to just get an infrastructure built for our state. And we're working on getting hemp put in as a rotation crop with corn and soybean and cotton. Those are things that we all grow very well here.
So fantastic to see this, to see the plant starting to take root. And once that infrastructure comes, there is going to be that market. Those markets, I don't want to say that meaning the hemp industries. It's such an interesting thing because it's hard to say anything in the singular with hemp when we understand all of the different varieties that all of the different industries that it serves. But those markets will be available to the Louisiana farmers as that infrastructure comes. And when you talk about variety trials, because an acre is a lot, a variety trial certainly does not need to be a full acre. In fact, we often saw, at the University of Kentucky, Colorado State University, were two of the universities, and Cornell, of course, that really started to very early on when the 2014 Farm Bill passed, which of course was for agricultural research pilots. Their variety trials, some of them looked about like kind of 2 6-foot or 2 8-foot tables put together. They were just that big, and it was variety corn, variety soy, variety flax. It was, and so there really does not need to be a ton of land, to do those variety trials. And so when you talk to farmers, are there farmers in Louisiana speaking to you about kind of doing those little more small plots this year to see if they can advance the industries for when that infrastructure comes?
Yes, ma'am. We did have interest in some, and we had some lined out. But when that big Arctic blast come through, it really devastated this area. A lot of the barns and all that stuff collapsed under the weight of all the
Oh,
ice.
wow.
Collapsed on their equipment.
Yes.
Had a total loss. It was. So a lot of them called and was like, "I'm out this year. I can't do it." So we've kind of just really stuck with the universities, Oakish Mound supplying them and getting it in their hands and letting them do some trials and see what sticks. We're getting probably about 14 different varieties coming from Europe that should be here
Excellent.
in a little while. We got 2 from Colorado and 2 out of Canada as well. And those are being put in the ground now. So we're going to kind of
Excellent.
do a spring and a fall planting as well as the goal. And then whatever the universities find along with Oakish Mound, then that's what we are going to offer to the farmers next year. If we find a variety that does, decent and does well, and educate these farmers on how to plant and harvest and grow this.
Outstanding, Brian and Jenny. This is really fantastic. And when you tell me the stories, I want the listeners out there to hear, those of you who are not farmers, the farmers are our heroes. We would die without rainfall and the top 6 inches of soil. No matter how much money you have, no matter how much health you have, no matter how much power you have, without rainfall and the top 6 inches of soil, we will all die. It is the farmers that farm and depend on the rain and the sun and the weather to produce the sustenance that all of us, no matter how rich, how healthy, how powerful we are. And I can't believe I'm saying we. I'm nowhere even near in that. The last thing I am is rich and powerful, but I'm saying the 1% billionaires. Without the top 6 inches of soil and the rain, they will die. Our farmers are the most important people and part of our entire life chain on the planet. are the farmers. And when, we talk about how that all of that ice, that Arctic blast, and what that did, buildings collapsed. Oh my God, equipment was ruined. Seeds can't go into the ground because of this. Really, I just say these things to draw attention, to really begin to understand, because there are multiple revolutions taking place on the planet Earth right now. There's an agricultural revolution, industrial revolution, healthcare revolution, revolution of consciousness. There is a revolution of awareness, and of really what is truly important. And I am watching as farming and gardening and agriculture and horticulture it's starting to become really hip and really popular. And the kids are also starting to realize that farming is cool and gardening is cool. And it's this turn that is happening, a rotation in our own thinking and in our own awareness. And I just cannot wait for the farmers to really be uplifted and acknowledged for the absolute heroes and heroines that they are. And I'm just sending so much love to Louisiana as our farmers recover from these really costly weather disasters.
It was very neat to watch them recover so fast and already be planting as we speak. For them to recover that quick and get equipment and then get seeds in the ground right now is just it's pretty amazing to watch them recover so fast.
The resilience, and that's kind of another aspect of what farmers are. They are the most resilient. And when people really realize, gee, what does it take to farm? Well, you only have to be a meteorologist, you have to be a tech person, you have to know computers, math, got to do bookkeeping. I can name 10 million things before we get to the farming part of what a farmer has to do in order to be a farmer, and has to know and manage. Man, and has to be a human resources genius as well.
Yes.
And on top of that, needs to know how to manage human resources during high demand and low demand times, planting, harvesting. I mean, oh my goodness. So really, my love going out to all the farmers, and in particular Louisiana, just getting hit. And before we go, and I'll be so excited to have you folks back, can you share with the listeners what we mean by Oakish Mound? Okhish, Oakish Mound. And by the way, listeners, you can certainly go to Oakish-Mound-Farm is on Facebook, and you can go to our site at PodCONX.com. That's PodConX.com for the show, and we'll get you the link to the Oakish-Mound-Farm Facebook page. But explain to us where the sacred name Oakish Mound comes from.
So I am Native American and Spanish, and Brian is Native American and French. And we are very much in tap with our roots, and it goes way back. So Oakish is the Choctaw word for medicine. So the name of our farm is Medicine Mound.
Beautiful, beautiful. Oakish Mound Farms. Well, you're a medicine man and a medicine woman doing the most important things that can be done in that state and for our whole nation, and of course, for the reemergence of the crop globally. Jenny and Brian, thank you for everything that you do. I can't wait till I get to visit with you guys in person again. And by the way, may I ask, is Southern Hemp Expo on your radar for September 2nd through 4th by any chance in Raleigh, or will you be harvesting?
We are trying our best to make as many expos and conferences as we can. Yes, ma'am. It is on our list.
Yay. I sure hope I'm going to be able to see you. I'll check in with you again before then, guys. And
absolutely. And you're always more than welcome to come here.
I cannot wait to visit you guys in Louisiana. That's on the list.
Yes, always.
So on the list. Well, thank you 10 million times over for being with us on Hemp Barons today, for everything that you do. And then I'm wishing you everything wonderful. Until we meet again, guys, thank you.
Thank you, Miss Joy.
So much, Miss Joy. It's been a pleasure.